Paris Jackson's battle with her father's estate. She grew up in the shadow of the king of pop, protected, hidden, almost mythical. And for years, Paris Jackson stayed silent. But now she's speaking out. And what she's saying could tear the Jackson family apart forever. Picture this. A young woman standing at a crossroads. On one side, the legacy of the most famous entertainer who ever lived. On the other, her own truth. Her own voice, and the courage to use it no matter the cost. Paris Jackson didn't just make a claim against her father's estate. She drew a line in the sand. And now, the world is watching as one of music's most iconic families faces a battle that no amount of money or fame can fix. This isn't just about Michael Jackson's fortune. It's about identity, control, and the question every child of a legend must eventually face. Who am I when I step out of that shadow? Let's go back to the beginning. Because to understand what's happening now, you need to know where Paris came from. And trust me, her story is unlike anything you've ever heard. April 3, 1998. Paris Michael. Catherine Jackson was born into a world most of us can't even imagine. Her father wasn't just famous. He was a global phenomenon. A man who could sell out stadiums in minutes. Whose music videos were cultural events. Whose every move was dissected by millions. And yet, for the first years of Paris's life, almost no one knew what she looked like. Michael Jackson was obsessed with privacy, particularly when it came to his children. Paris, along with her brothers Prince and Blanket, were kept away from cameras, hidden behind veils and masks whenever they appeared in public. To the outside world, they were ghosts. Mysterious figures in the life of a man who'd spent his entire existence in the spotlight. But inside Neverland Ranch, life was different. Magical, even. Paris has spoken about this. About growing up on a sprawling estate with a private zoo, an amusement park in her backyard. About a father who, despite all his eccentricities, loved his children fiercely. Who homeschooled them. Who played with them. Who tried, in his own complicated way, to give them a childhood he never had. And then, everything changed. June 25, 2009. Paris was only 11 years old. When Michael Jackson died, the news sent shockwaves around the world. Tributes poured in from every corner of the globe. But for Paris, it wasn't a celebrity death. It was the loss of her father. Her protector, her entire world. Do you remember that moment? At Michael's memorial service, when a young Paris, tears streaming down her face, stepped up to the microphone and said those words that broke everyone's heart ever since I was born. Daddy has been the best father you could ever imagine. And I just want to say I love him so much. Her voice cracked. The world watched. And in that instant, Paris Jackson stopped being a mystery. She became real, vulnerable, human. But what came next was even harder than losing her father. Because suddenly, Paris and her siblings were thrust into a world of legal battles, estate conflicts, and family drama that would make a soap opera look tame. Michael's will named his mother, Catherine Jackson, as the guardian of his children. It also established an estate managed by executors John Branca and John McClane. The estate would control Michael's music catalog, his image, his brand, everything, and it would be worth billions. At first, Paris was just a kid trying to grieve, trying to figure out life without her dad. She was living with her grandmother, Catherine, surrounded by aunts, uncles, and cousins who all had their own opinions about Michael's legacy, about how things should be handled, about who deserved what. But as Paris got older, something started to shift. She began to find her own voice, her own identity. And it wasn't always what the family expected. By her teenage years, Paris was rebelling, pushing back against the image of the perfect Jackson daughter. She dyed her hair, got tattoos, started pursuing modeling and acting. She was determined to be herself, not just Michael Jackson's daughter. And that independence came with a price. Paris has been open about her struggles. The depression, the anxiety, the suicide attempts. She's talked about feeling lost, about the pressure of carrying a legacy she never asked for, about the constant scrutiny from a world that wanted her to be something she wasn't. But through it all, Paris kept moving forward. She built a career, released music, became an advocate for mental health and LGBTQ rights. She carved out her own space in the world. And slowly, she started asking questions. Questions about her father's estate, about the decisions being made in his name, about whether those decisions truly honored his memory. And that's where things got complicated. The Michael Jackson estate is massive. We're talking about one of the most valuable celebrity estates in history. After Michael's death, the executors worked to pay off his debts and rebuild his brand. They secured deals for movies, merchandise, music releases. They turned Michael's legacy into a billion-dollar empire. On paper, this sounds great. Michael's children are beneficiaries. They receive money from the estate. They're financially secure. But here's the thing Paris started to realize. Being a beneficiary isn't the same as having control. And having money isn't the same as having a say in how your father's memory is used. Paris began to speak out. Not loudly at first. Just hints, comments in interviews, social media posts that suggested tension. She'd talk about feeling disconnected from the decisions being made, about projects being launched in Michael's name that didn't feel right to her, about a growing sense that the estate was more interested in profit than in protecting who Michael really was. And then came the breaking point. Sources close to the family say Paris made a formal claim. She challenged the estate's authority, questioned whether the executors truly had Michael's best interests at heart, whether they were honoring his artistic vision or just chasing dollar signs. She wanted more transparency, more input, more respect for what she knew about her father that the public never would. This wasn't just about money. Paris doesn't need cash. She has her own career, her own life. This was about something deeper, about legacy, about truth, about making sure her father's story is told the right way. But not everyone in the Jackson family agreed. The Jackson family is complicated, always has been. There are alliances, rivalries, old wounds that never quite healed. Some family members supported Paris. They agreed that the estate had too much power, that the children should have more say, that something needed to change. But others pushed back. They argued that the estate had done an incredible job, that it had taken Michael's debt-ridden legacy and turned it into a fortune, that challenging the executors would only create chaos, that Paris was young, emotional, and didn't understand the business side of things. The family split right down the middle. And suddenly, private disagreements became public drama. Katherine Jackson, now in her 90s, found herself caught in the middle. She loves her granddaughter, but she also trusts the estate. She's seen what they've accomplished, and she knows how complicated Michael's affairs were, how many people were trying to take advantage, how important it was to have strong management. Paris's brothers had their own opinions. Prince, the eldest, has generally stayed neutral. He's built his own life, focused on his own projects. He doesn't seem interested in public battles. Blanket, now going by Biggie, is even more private. He's rarely seen, rarely heard from. And when it comes to estate drama, he stayed completely out of it. But Paris couldn't stay silent. And her willingness to speak up has made her both a hero and a villain. Depending on who you ask, to her supporters, Paris is brave. She's standing up to powerful men who've controlled her father's image for over a decade. She's demanding accountability. She's fighting for her father's true legacy, not just the sanitized, profitable version the estate wants to sell. To her critics, Paris is naive. She doesn't understand business. She's letting emotion cloud her judgment. She's risking everything the estate has built over a teenage sense of rebellion that never quite left her. But here's what neither side seems to fully acknowledge. Paris knew Michael in ways no one else did. She was his daughter. She lived with him, talked to him, understood his fears, his dreams, his regrets. And maybe, just maybe, she sees things in how his legacy is being handled that outsiders miss. Michael Jackson was complicated, brilliant and broken, innovative and troubled. His life was filled with contradictions, and his death didn't resolve them. The estate has focused on his genius, his music, his performances, but Paris has hinted at something else. At a father who was hurt by the industry, who wanted out, who dreamed of something different before it all ended. What if Paris isn't just fighting for control? What if she's fighting for truth? The claim Paris made reportedly centers on several issues. First, transparency. She wants to know exactly how decisions are being made, what projects are being approved, where the money is going. Second, artistic integrity. She's concerned that the estate is greenlighting projects Michael would have hated, documentaries that sensationalize his life, music releases he never approved, merchandise that cheapens his brand. There's no easy answer here, no clear right or wrong, just a young woman trying to honor her father the best way she knows how, and a family trying to figure out what happens when love, money, and legacy end. Third, the big one. She wants a seat at the table. Paris believes that as Michael's children grow into adults, they should have more input into how his legacy is managed. They shouldn't just be beneficiaries. They should be stewards. The estate's response has been measured. Publicly, they've said very little. They've released statements emphasizing their fiduciary duty, their track record of success, their commitment to honoring Michael's memory. But behind the scenes, sources say they're frustrated. They see Paris as ungrateful, as someone who doesn't understand how hard they've worked to rebuild what Michael left behind, and legally, the estate has a point. Michael's will is clear. He named specific executors. He didn't give his children control. Whether that was an oversight or intentional, we'll never know. But it means Paris is fighting an uphill battle. Changing the structure of the estate would require legal action, court battles, public disputes that could drag on for years. Is Paris willing to go that far? Some say yes, that she's prepared to fight this to the bitter end. Others think she's hoping for negotiation, for compromise, for the estate to meet her halfway. But here's the real question. What does all this mean for Michael Jackson's legacy? Because at the end of the day, that's what this is really about. Michael Jackson changed music forever. He broke barriers, created art that will outlive all of us. But his story is also filled with pain, accusations, controversy. The estate has worked hard to focus on the positive, to celebrate the music and minimize the mess. Paris, though, seems to want something more honest. She's defended her father fiercely against allegations. But she's also been willing to acknowledge his humanity, his flaws, his struggles. Maybe she believes that the truest way to honor him isn't to pretend he was perfect, but to show he was real. And that's a risky proposition. Because the more complicated the narrative becomes, the harder it is to sell. The estate's job is to protect the brand. Paris's instinct is to protect the man. Those two goals don't always align as this battle plays out. The world watches. Some with sympathy for Paris, others with skepticism, but everyone with fascination. Because the Jackson family drama is one of those stories that never quite ends. Every generation brings new conflict, new revelations, new heartbreak. Paris Jackson was supposed to be the next chapter, the daughter who carried on the legacy, who proved that Michael's children could thrive despite everything. And in many ways, she has. She's built a life, found her voice, become more than just a famous last name. But now she's fighting a fight that could define her for years to come. And no matter how it ends, something will be lost. If she wins, she risks damaging relationships with family members who disagree. If she loses, she'll spend the rest of her life watching decisions made in her father's name that she doesn't agree with. So what happens next? That's the question everyone's asking. Will Paris take legal action? Will the estate offer her more involvement? Will the family find a way to heal? Or will this divide them forever? Only time will tell. But one thing is certain, Paris Jackson isn't backing down. She spent her whole life being told who she should be, how she should act, what she should say, and she's done listening. She's not the little girl crying at her father's funeral anymore. She's a woman with her own voice, her own truth, and she's ready to fight for what she believes in, no matter the cost. The king of pop may be gone, but his legacy is very much alive. And right now, his daughter is determined to shape it. Whether the world is ready for that or not, if you found this story as fascinating as we did, make sure to like this video and subscribe to Luminoir for more deep dives into the lives of celebrities you thought you knew. Drop a comment below with your thoughts. Do you think Paris is right to challenge the estate? Or should she let the executors continue their work? We want to hear from you.